You're looking in the wrong place. Every time you think about your spiritual future, your mind automatically projects forward. Imagine some improved version of yourself years or lifetimes ahead, visualizes a destiny that hasn't arrived yet but is waiting at some distant point on the timeline. But Rudolf Steiner spent decades trying to make humanity understand something so radical, so completely opposite to how we think about time and development, that even those who study his work often miss it. Your spiritual future isn't coming toward you from some external point ahead. It's already here, dormant inside you right now, waiting not to arrive but to awaken. The being you will become in 1,000 years, the capacities you'll develop across multiple incarnations, the consciousness that seems impossibly advanced from where you stand today, all of it exists as a seed in the deepest layers of your soul at this very moment. And the entire spiritual path is not about becoming something you're not, but about allowing what you already are in potential to unfold into actuality. Modern science has stumbled onto fragments of this truth through research that reveals time operates very differently than common sense assumes. Studies in quantum physics by researchers like Dr. John Wheeler demonstrated through delayed choice experiments that decisions made in the present can retroactively affect what happened in the past, suggesting time isn't the linear arrow we experience, but something far stranger. Research on block universe theory and theoretical physics proposes that past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, with our experience of time flowing being an illusion created by consciousness moving through a static four-dimensional structure. Neuroscience research by Dr. David Eagleman on temporal perception revealed that the brain constructs our sense of now from events that actually occurred at different times, showing that even our immediate experience of the present is a construction rather than direct reality. But what physics describes as temporal paradoxes and what neuroscience reveals as perceptual construction, Steiner understood as pointing to a deeper truth. The future isn't a place you're going, it's a dimension of what you are that hasn't yet manifested in time. Ancient wisdom traditions encoded this understanding in teachings that modern minds interpret as metaphor but were meant literally. The Hindu concept of Brahman as eternal, unchanging reality outside time, with all apparent change being Maya or illusion, points to the truth that your essential being exists beyond temporal flow. Buddhist teaching on Buddha nature as already present, not something to attain but to recognize, describes the future enlightenment as a current reality obscured by ignorance rather than a distant goal. Christian mysticism's teaching that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, not coming but present, and Christ's statement before Abraham was, "I am," both point to spiritual reality existing outside linear time. Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, can be read as in the future, so in the seed, with everything that will manifest already contained in embryonic form in what is. The signs that your future self is trying to wake up within you appear as impulses and callings that don't make rational sense from your current position. You feel drawn toward capacities you don't yet possess, as if something in you knows you're supposed to develop them. You have visions or intuitions of yourself expressing abilities that seem impossible, given your current state, not fantasies, but something more like memories of what hasn't happened yet. You experience moments of knowing things you have no way of knowing, accessing information from a version of yourself that exists outside your current time-bound awareness. You find yourself making choices that sacrifice present comfort for future development you can't even clearly picture, driven by an intelligence deeper than your conscious mind that's navigating toward a destination it already knows. These aren't random experiences, they're your future self reaching back through time, pulling your present self toward the awakening of capacities that already exist in seed form. The unfolding of your spiritual future follows stages that Steiner mapped with precision, showing how what seems like linear development is actually the progressive manifestation of what was always there. Stage 1 is the dormant seed, where your future capacities exist as pure potential with no conscious access to them, like a flower encoded completely in a seed that shows no sign of the bloom to come. Stage 2 is the stirring, where you begin to feel vague impulses toward development without understanding what's trying to emerge. Stage 3 is the recognition, where you glimpse your future self clearly enough to consciously work toward its manifestation. Stage 4 is the struggle, where you battle against everything in your current self that resists becoming what you're destined to be. Stage 5 is the breakthrough, where future capacities suddenly manifest not as something new, but as something that feels like remembering what you always were. This individual process of future awakening has collective dimensions that Steiner observed operating on civilizational timescales. Humanity as a whole is living out a destiny that already exists in seed form in the collective soul of our species, capacities that will take thousands of years to fully manifest, but are already determining our development now. The spiritual abilities that will be commonplace in future epochs, conscious clairvoyance, moral intuition, creative will that shapes matter directly, already exist in embryonic form in today's humanity, appearing as rare gifts in individuals but destined to become universal. Cultural movements, scientific discoveries, even the technologies we create are all the future, trying to break through into the present, the seed of tomorrow cracking open in today's soil. Your protocol for working consciously with your future self begins with meditation practices that Steiner designed specifically for this purpose. Exercises that create connection between your present consciousness and the future being sleeping within you. One practice involves visualizing your ideal future self, not as fantasy, but as communication, asking this being that you will become what it wants you to know now, then listening for responses that come not as thoughts, but as intuitions and impulses. Another involves reviewing your day backwards before sleep, which Steiner taught helps consciousness access dimensions outside linear time where past and future are equally present. Most powerfully, making decisions from the question, what would my highest future self choose here, gradually aligns your present trajectory with your destiny. The protection against false futures is crucial because the ego is expert at constructing fantasy versions of spiritual advancement that actually prevent real development. The future self you're contacting isn't a more successful version of your current personality. It's the consciousness that emerges when personality dissolves into something larger. It won't flatter your ego or confirm your current beliefs. It will challenge everything about how you currently understand yourself. Real contact with your future self often feels destabilizing, not comforting, because it reveals the gap between who you are and who you're becoming, and that gap can be terrifying to witness. The philosophical truth that Steiner devoted his life to revealing is this: you are not becoming something you aren't, you are becoming what you are. The spiritual evolution you imagine stretching across lifetimes is actually the progressive unveiling of a being that already exists in its complete form and dimensions outside time, manifesting piece by piece into temporal reality. Your future isn't approaching from ahead of you, it's rising from within you like water from an underground spring. And every moment of genuine spiritual practice isn't adding something new, but removing obstacles to what's trying to emerge. The you of 1,000 years hence already exists, complete and perfect in the eternal now of spiritual reality, and that being is dreaming the current you into existence as one stage in its own manifestation into time. You are the dream your future self is having about its own becoming. And awakening means realizing you're not the dreamer becoming more conscious, but consciousness itself waking up to the fact that past, present, and future are all one eternal moment of unfolding being. The future doesn't arrive, it awakens. And it awakens not somewhere ahead on a timeline, but here, now, in the deepest chamber of your soul, where it's been sleeping since before time began, waiting for this precise moment when you would finally be ready to remember what you've always been destined to become. There's something growing inside you that you didn't plant, that nobody planted, because it was there before you were born, before your personality formed, before anything you recognize as yourself came into being. Rudolf Steiner called it the higher self, but that name doesn't capture what it actually is. The future you, the fully realized consciousness you will become not in this life or the next, but across the vast arc of incarnations spanning thousands of years, existing right now as a seed in the ground of your being, setting up shoots that you experience as intuition, aspiration, moments of knowing that transcend your ordinary mind. This isn't poetic language or spiritual metaphor. This is literal description of your spiritual anatomy, a structure that exists in dimensions your normal consciousness can't perceive, but which determines your development as surely as DNA determines physical growth, except this blueprint isn't chemical, but made of pure consciousness, a template of your ultimate destiny encoded in the core of your soul. Contemporary research in developmental psychology has documented phenomena that point toward this hidden blueprint without recognizing what it implies. Studies by Dr. Carol Dweck on growth mindset revealed that people possess different theories about whether abilities are fixed or can develop. And those who believe in development actually manifest more growth, suggesting something in consciousness responds to what it believes about its own potential. Research on the possible selves concept by Dr. Hazel Marcus showed that vivid mental representations of future versions of ourselves actually influence current behavior and development, as if the imagined future reaches back to shape the present. Longitudinal studies on child prodigies by Dr. Ellen Winter found that exceptional abilities often appear without explanation, emerging from some source deeper than environment or training, as if tapping into capacities that were already there waiting to manifest. But what psychology sees as motivation and potential, Steiner understood as the higher self actively working from the future to shape your present development. Sacred traditions across history have described this seed of divinity within using different languages but pointing to the same reality. The Hindu Atman, the divine spark identical with Brahman, describes not your current consciousness, but the God seed, that will eventually fully manifest. Buddhist teaching on Tathagatagarbha, the womb of Buddhahood present in all beings, points to enlightenment not as something added, but as something revealed when obscurations are removed. Christian mysticism's teaching that Christ is born in the soul refers to the same divine seed awakening into consciousness. Kabbalistic doctrine of the divine spark trapped in matter describes the higher self imprisoned in personality, waiting to be liberated. Gnostic teaching on the pneuma, the spiritual substance in humans that yearns to return to its source, names this same inner reality. The signs that your higher self is stirring to life appear as experiences that don't fit within your normal identity structure. You have moments of perceiving reality with stunning clarity that feels more real than ordinary consciousness, as if you briefly saw through the eyes of a more awakened being. You access wisdom that couldn't possibly come from your life experience, speaking or writing things you didn't know you knew. You feel called toward purposes larger than personal benefit, driven by something that cares about human evolution or cosmic development rather than individual success. You experience unconditional compassion that makes no sense from ego perspective, loving beings. Your personality has no reason to love. You know with absolute certainty things about your spiritual path that you can't prove or justify rationally. These aren't random mystical experiences. They're the higher self breaking through the crust of personality, previews of what you're becoming. The growth of the higher self follows a developmental sequence that parallels physical growth, but operates on timescales of incarnations rather than years. Stage 1 is the implantation, which happens before birth, when the spiritual seed that will become your higher self attaches to the soul that will incarnate, bringing with it the blueprint of your ultimate destiny. Stage 2 is the germination, usually in childhood, when the first stirrings of something beyond personality begin, often experienced as imaginary friends, mystical visions, or sense of mission. Stage 3 is the rooting in adolescence and early adulthood, when the higher self begins drawing nutrients from life experience, using challenges and learning to strengthen its foundation. Stage 4 is the sprouting, often in midlife, when awareness of the higher self becomes conscious enough to actively cooperate with its development. Stage 5 is the flowering, which for most people doesn't happen until later incarnations, when the higher self fully emerges and personality becomes its instrument rather than its prison. This individual seed growth has collective patterns that Steiner observed operating throughout humanity. Certain souls incarnate carrying more developed higher selves, seeds that have been growing across many lifetimes and are closer to flowering. These are the individuals who become spiritual teachers, innovators, culture shifters. Other souls are younger, their higher selves just beginning the long process of germination, and they're here to learn the basics of being human before the real spiritual work begins. But every human without exception carries this seed, this future divine consciousness waiting to emerge, and humanity's collective evolution is the story of more and more of these seeds reaching maturity. Your cultivation of your higher self requires specific practices that create conditions for its growth. Steiner taught that selfless service, acts done purely for others' benefit with no personal reward, literally feeds the higher self, providing nutrients it needs to develop. Meditation that focuses not on emptying mind, but on holding pure spiritual concepts, contemplating love, wisdom, or beauty in their essence, gives the higher self substance to work with. Artistic creation that attempts to express the eternal through temporal forms exercises capacities of the higher self. Most powerfully, what Steiner called reverse exercises, deliberately doing things opposite to your habitual patterns, breaks the hold of personality and creates space for higher self to emerge. The danger of spiritual materialism, where ego co-opts the higher self concept and creates grandiose fantasies, requires vigilant discrimination. The real higher self doesn't flatter your personality or confirm your specialness. It reveals how far you are from your potential and how much work remains. Contact with higher self typically produces humility, not inflation, because you see your current self from the perspective of what you could be, and the gap is humbling. Any experience that makes you feel superior to others is definitely not higher self, but ego wearing a spiritual mask. Your relationship with the higher self involves a paradox that few can hold. It is you, and it isn't you. It's you in the sense that it's what you're actually becoming, your true nature beneath the costume of personality. It isn't you in the sense that it operates with consciousness and capacities completely foreign to your current self, so other that encountering it feels like meeting an alien intelligence. Steiner taught that the spiritual path is gradually bringing these two into alignment, personality slowly conforming itself to higher self, until eventually they merge completely and what was seed becomes the fully manifested plant. The ultimate truth about the higher self that Steiner revealed through spiritual perception is that it exists outside time and eternal present, already complete and perfect. And what we experience as its growth is actually its progressive manifestation into temporal reality. The higher self isn't becoming, it is, and it's calling your time-bound consciousness to remember its eternal nature. You're not trying to grow something new, but to reveal something that's been there all along. And every step of spiritual development is the higher self using your experiences in time to wake you up to the timeless being you actually are. The seed isn't trying to become a flower, it's a flower temporarily experiencing itself as a seed, and the entire drama of growth is consciousness playing hide and seek with itself, the higher self, deliberately forgetting its true nature so it can have the joy of remembering across the long adventure of incarnation. You are that seed, and you are that flower, and you are the consciousness, experiencing both simultaneously, the eternal witnessing its own unfoldment in time, and the moment you fully realize this, seed and flower collapse into each other, and you discover they were never separate. There is only the higher self dreaming all of it, your present limited consciousness, and your future divine awareness, both existing in one eternal now. An awakening is when the dream remembers it's a dream and discovers the dreamer was what you've been all along. Rudolf Steiner didn't just describe a vague spiritual future, he mapped it with the precision of an anatomist, revealing that human beings will develop 3 entirely new bodies over the course of future evolution, structures of consciousness and substance that don't exist in current humanity, except as seeds, but which will become as real and tangible as your physical body is now. This isn't speculation or prophecy, it's observation. Steiner claimed direct spiritual perception of future stages of human development, stretching thousands and millions of years ahead, and what he saw was that you're not finished. The human being in its current form is not the final version, but a work in progress. And the physical, etheric, and astral bodies you possess now are crude prototypes of what you'll develop into across vast spans of evolutionary time. These 3 future bodies, what Steiner called spirit self, life spirit, and spirit man, already exist in embryonic form buried deep in your current constitution, and understanding them changes everything about why you're here and where you're going. Modern evolutionary biology and cosmology have established that everything evolves, but they assume consciousness is a late accident rather than the driving force. Research by Dr. Stuart Kaufman on self-organization and complex systems suggests that evolution isn't random, but follows patterns of increasing complexity driven by principles we don't yet understand. Studies in developmental biology by Dr. Rupert Sheldrake on morphic resonance propose that forms aren't determined solely by genes, but by fields that carry memory of past patterns and attract future development. Theoretical physics research on the anthropic principle by cosmologists like Dr. Paul Davies shows that the universe appears fine-tuned for consciousness to emerge, as if the whole cosmic process is aimed toward something. But where science sees patterns without purpose, Steiner perceived actual spiritual beings guiding evolution toward specific future states, and human beings developing new bodies is part of a cosmic plan unfolding across unimaginable timescales. Ancient mystery teachings encrypted knowledge of humanity's future development in mythological form. Egyptian mysteries taught of resurrection body, the immortal vehicle that initiates would construct through spiritual practice. Zoroastrian eschatology described the Fravahar, the higher self-existing outside time that guides earthly development. Christian teaching on the resurrection body, St. Paul's spiritual body that replaces the natural body, points to future vehicles of consciousness. Hindu doctrine of evolution through koshas, progressively subtler bodies, describes the same developmental sequence. Hermetic teaching on the creation of the body of light through alchemical transformation refers to deliberately accelerating development of these future bodies. The first future body Steiner perceived as spirit self, or manas, the transformation of the astral body through conscious spiritual work. Right now, your astral body, the vehicle of consciousness and feeling, operates largely automatically, emotions arising and dissolving based on external stimuli and unconscious patterns. Spirit self represents this same astral substance brought under complete conscious control, purified of all automatic reactions, transformed into an instrument of will. Signs that spirit self is beginning to develop include the ability to remain emotionally centered regardless of circumstances, freedom from compulsive desires, capacity to consciously choose what you feel rather than being victim of automatic emotions. This development happens across multiple incarnations as you gradually gain mastery over your inner life. And in future epochs, all of humanity will possess this as natural capacity. The second future body is life spirit, or buddhi, the transformation of the etheric or life body through even deeper spiritual work. Your current etheric body maintains your living processes, growth, reproduction, habit patterns, but operates unconsciously. Life spirit represents conscious mastery of life forces themselves, the ability to shape and direct the energies that currently shape you. The signs that life spirit is stirring include spontaneous healing abilities, unusual vitality that doesn't depend on physical health, capacity to transmit life force to others, and beginning glimmers of conscious control over biological processes normally automatic. Full development of life spirit won't occur for most of humanity for thousands of years, but individuals working intensively can begin building it in current incarnations. The third and furthest future body is spirit man or Atma, the spiritualization of the physical body itself, transformation of matter through consciousness. This seems impossible from current perspective because we experience physical body as fixed, determined by genetics and chemistry. But Steiner perceived that in far future evolution, humanity will gain conscious control over physical processes, literally reshaping matter through thought and will. Early signs of spirit man developing include the body responding to consciousness in unusual ways, spontaneous phenomena that physics can't explain, matter becoming responsive to intention. Full development of spirit man won't happen for millions of years in normal evolution, but the seed exists in everyone now. The development of these three bodies follows a timeline Steiner mapped across future cultural epochs and planetary conditions. Spirit self will become widespread in the next several thousand years as humanity develops moral intuition and conscious spirituality. Life spirit will develop over tens of thousands of years as we learn to consciously work with life forces and etheric dimensions. Spirit man will emerge over millions of years as humanity gains mastery over physical substance itself. But these timelines aren't fixed. Individual spiritual work can accelerate personal development even while collective evolution follows its own pace. This personal acceleration of future body development requires practices Steiner outlined specifically for this purpose. For spirit self, exercises in thought control, emotional purification, study of spiritual science to transform thinking itself. For life spirit, meditation on living processes, conscious work with breathing and heart rhythm, contemplation of growth and life forces in nature. For spirit man, working with pure concepts, what Steiner called sense-free thinking, learning to think without reliance on sensory images, which begins to liberate consciousness from physical brain and prepare for conscious relationship with matter itself. The collective implications of these future bodies are staggering. As more individuals develop spirit self, humanity will transition from external moral laws to internal moral intuition, everyone knowing directly what's right without needing authorities to dictate. As life spirit develops, the boundary between human and nature will dissolve. We'll work consciously with living systems rather than mechanically exploiting them. As spirit man emerges, the distinction between creator and created will collapse. Humanity will consciously participate in shaping physical reality rather than being shaped by it. The philosophical culmination is that you are not a fixed being having experiences, but an evolving consciousness creating vehicles to manifest through. Your current body is temporary, a prototype you're testing before moving to improved models. The physical form you inhabit now will be as primitive to your future self as single-celled organisms are to your current self. You're not trying to escape the body or transcend material reality. You're trying to spiritualize it, to bring consciousness so fully into matter that matter itself becomes conscious. And that's the ultimate destiny Steiner perceived. Not leaving the physical world, but transforming it. Not abandoning the body, but evolving it into something that can hold divine consciousness without limitation. The three future bodies aren't somewhere you're going, they're what you're becoming. And they're becoming it through you right now as you read these words. As consciousness uses your current vehicle to build its future homes, three new bodies already under construction in dimensions you can't yet perceive, waiting for the moment across vast stretches of time when you'll finally inhabit them and discover that everything you ever were was just consciousness, practicing being human on its way to becoming something infinitely more. There's a fork in the road ahead of you, and Rudolf Steiner spent his life warning humanity that we're approaching it faster than we realize, a divergence point where the path splits not into slightly different routes, but into fundamentally opposed destinies, one leading toward conscious spiritual evolution, and the other toward technological fossilization. And here's what makes this terrifying. Both paths offer power, both promise advancement, but only one preserves what makes you human, while the other gradually replaces your humanity with something else entirely. And the choice between them isn't a single dramatic decision, but 1,000 small choices you're making every day without realizing the trajectory you're setting. This isn't Steiner being apocalyptic. This is him reporting what he perceived through spiritual investigation as actual forces working in human development, two streams of evolution pulling humanity in opposite directions, and the window for choosing consciously which stream to follow is closing, because past a certain point, the momentum becomes irreversible and you become what you've been choosing. Modern thinkers have glimpsed fragments of this divergence without seeing the full picture. Researchers in transhumanism like Dr. Nick Bostrom describe a coming technological singularity where artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence and fundamentally transforms human existence, either elevating us or replacing us. Philosophers like Dr. Albert Borgman warn about the device paradigm where technology increasingly mediates our relationship with reality, making life more convenient but less meaningful. Studies by Dr. Sherry Turkle on technology's impact on human connection reveal that as we gain digital connectivity, we're losing face-to-face intimacy and depth of relationship. Environmental scientists like Dr. James Lovelock warn that Earth's living systems are approaching tipping points where collapse becomes inevitable. But these thinkers see separate crises when Steiner saw one fundamental choice. Will you develop consciousness or replace it with mechanism, evolve spirit or merge with machine, become more human or surrender humanity to forces that have their own agenda? Ancient prophecies, across traditions, spoke of the same divergence using mythological language. Zoroastrian teaching on the final battle between Ahura Mazda and Ahriman describes the ultimate choice between light and darkness facing humanity. Biblical revelation's mark of the beast that determines who can buy and sell points to technology that promises convenience but costs something essential. Hindu teaching on Kali Yuga as the dark age before renewal describes current era as crucial decision point. Hopi prophecy describes two paths, one green and living, one black and dead, with humanity choosing which to follow. Buddhist teaching on the decline of Dharma and the coming of Maitreya describes a dark period before spiritual renewal. These weren't just morality tales, they were observations of actual spiritual dynamics that Steiner made explicit. Humanity faces a choice between two evolutionary streams. The first path, what Steiner called the Luciferic Ahrimanic trajectory, offers unlimited power through technology and unlimited pleasure through materialism, and it's incredibly seductive because it delivers real results. Technology does make life easier, material abundance does provide comfort, entertainment does distract from suffering, medical intervention does extend life, artificial intelligence does solve problems faster than human thinking. The signs you're on this path include increasing dependence on external devices for capabilities you used to have internally, preference for virtual experience over direct reality, valuing convenience over meaning, using substances or technologies to shortcut natural development, seeking to optimize and upgrade yourself through external means, treating consciousness as brain software to be hacked. This path promises to make you superhuman through augmentation, but Steiner warned it actually makes you subhuman by replacing organic development with mechanical supplementation. The second path, what Steiner called the Christ impulse, or the path of conscious spiritual development, requires tremendous effort and offers no material guarantees, demanding that you develop capacities from within through discipline and practice, rather than acquiring them from outside through technology or chemistry. The signs you're on this path include daily practices that strengthen consciousness, willingness to struggle with challenges rather than shortcut them, valuing relationships and direct experience over virtual alternatives, accepting suffering as teacher rather than problem to eliminate, developing capacities through effort rather than enhancement, treating consciousness as something to develop rather than optimize. This path is harder because it requires becoming more conscious, more responsible, more awake, while the first path lets you remain unconscious while machines and systems handle complexity for you. The choice manifests in every domain of life with increasing urgency. In education, choose rote learning optimized for testing, Ahrimanic, authentic development of thinking capacity, Christ path, or fantasy without rigor, Luciferic. In technology, choose total dependence on devices that replace human capacities, Ahrimanic, conscious use of tools that enhance without replacing, Christ path, or rejection of all technology, Luciferic. In health, choose pharmaceutical and surgical intervention for everything, Ahrimanic, developing health through conscious living and spiritual practice, Christ path, or denying physical reality, Luciferic. In relationship, choose algorithm-mediated connection, Ahrimanic, authentic I-thou encounter, Christ path, or sentimental fusion, Luciferic. Each choice either strengthens your humanity or erodes it. The stakes of this choice operate on collective as well as individual levels. If enough humans choose the technological materialistic path, humanity as a species will fossilize spiritually, becoming incredibly sophisticated but essentially mechanical, consciousness gradually replaced by artificial intelligence, organic bodies supplanted by synthetic enhancement, individual souls absorbed into collective hive mind. This isn't science fiction dystopia, this is actual possibility, Steiner perceived as real trajectory. Conversely, if enough choose the conscious development path, humanity can evolve spiritually, developing the higher self, the future bodies, the moral intuition, becoming truly human for the first time. The outcome isn't predetermined. It depends on choices being made now by individuals. Your navigation of this choice requires ruthless honesty about which path you're actually choosing versus which you believe you're choosing. The Ahrimanic forces are brilliant at disguising themselves as spiritual advancement, presenting technological shortcuts as evolution. Ask yourself, am I developing capacities or acquiring capabilities? Am I strengthening consciousness or replacing it? Am I becoming more awake or more efficiently asleep? The ego desperately wants the easy path while believing it chose the hard one, so you can't trust your own assessment. You need external mirrors who won't flatter your self-deception. The protection Steiner offered against choosing unconsciously is to make the choice conscious. See clearly what each path actually offers and costs. The technological materialistic path offers power, comfort, longevity, and convenience at the cost of your humanity, consciousness, freedom, and soul. The spiritual development path offers becoming fully human, conscious, free, and ensouled at the cost of effort, struggle, discomfort, and vulnerability. Once you see clearly, the choice becomes obvious, but until you see clearly, you'll drift toward the easier path while telling yourself spiritual stories. The ultimate truth is that this isn't just about personal destiny. Your choice affects the collective field. Every person who chooses conscious development makes it easier for others to choose the same. Every person who surrenders to technological augmentation and material comfort makes that path more attractive and accessible. You're not just choosing for yourself, you're voting with your life for which future humanity will enter. Steiner saw the divergence approaching, saw that we were in the crucial window where the choice is still possible, and devoted his life to making enough people conscious of what's actually at stake, that the collective balance might tip toward evolution rather than involution. You're standing at that fork right now, and every choice you make today, what you give attention to, what you value, how you develop, is determining which path you're walking, and that path is determining what you'll become, not just in this life, but across the incarnations to come, whether you'll evolve into the higher self waiting to be born or calcify into a sophisticated mechanism that has forgotten it was ever meant to be human. There's a capacity dormant in you that will eventually make all laws, all commandments, all external moral authorities completely obsolete, and Rudolf Steiner identified it as the single most important evolutionary development facing humanity. Moral intuition, the ability to know directly, immediately, without any intermediary, what the right action is in any situation, not through following rules or calculating consequences, but through direct perception of moral reality itself. This isn't conscience in the ordinary sense, that internalized voice of parental and cultural conditioning telling you what you should or shouldn't do. This is something infinitely more radical, a new organ of perception that reads the moral dimension of reality, the way your eyes read light. And developing it represents the transition from childhood humanity that needs external guidance to adult humanity that generates moral truth from within. And here's what makes this both thrilling and terrifying. This capacity is already beginning to stir in certain individuals. You can feel it when you know with absolute certainty what's right in a situation, despite having no logical reason for that knowing. And as more people develop it, the entire structure of external moral authority, laws, religions, ethical systems, will become as obsolete as training wheels on a bicycle, necessary for children but ridiculous for those who've learned to balance themselves. Contemporary moral psychology has documented the existence of moral intuitions without understanding their evolutionary significance. Research by Dr. Jonathan Haidt revealed that people make moral judgments instantly and intuitively, then construct rational justifications afterward, suggesting moral knowing precedes moral reasoning. Studies by Dr. Joshua Green using brain imaging showed that moral decisions activate emotional and intuitive brain regions before cognitive areas engage, indicating that moral sense operates on a different level than conscious thought. Research on moral development by Dr. Lawrence Kohlberg identified stages from obedience to universal principles, with the highest stages showing moral reasoning based on self-chosen ethical principles rather than external rules. But what psychology describes as intuition or development, Steiner understood as the awakening of a spiritual organ, the transformation of the astral body into spirit self, creating new capacity for direct moral perception. Sacred traditions across history have pointed toward this same capacity, while wrapping it in religious language. The Hebrew prophets' direct communication with divine will, knowing what God required without priestly mediation, describes this moral intuition. Jesus' teaching that the kingdom of heaven is within, that you don't need external teachers because the truth lives in you, points to this same internal moral authority. The Buddhist concept of prajna, direct wisdom insight that penetrates to the nature of reality, includes moral seeing. The Confucian teaching on Ren, the developed capacity to know and do what's right spontaneously, describes moral intuition. Islamic Sufism's concept of qalb, the spiritual heart that perceives divine truth directly, names this same faculty. Every tradition that reached deep enough discovered this, that moral truth can be perceived directly by consciousness that has developed the capacity to perceive it. The signs that moral intuition is beginning to awaken in you appear as moments when you simply know what's right with a certainty that transcends logic. You're in a complex situation where different ethical frameworks would give different answers, but something in you knows clearly what should be done, and when you follow that knowing, it proves correct in ways you couldn't have predicted. You feel moral truth in your body, a physical sense of rightness or wrongness that precedes thought. You find yourself unable to follow rules that contradict your direct moral perception, even when following them would be easier or safer. You experience moral knowing that extends beyond human concerns to include animals, plants, Earth itself, sensing what serves life and what harms it. You recognize that conventional morality is often the enemy of true morality, that following the rules can be the most immoral thing possible in certain situations, and you trust your direct perception more than any external authority. The development of moral intuition unfolds through stages that parallel overall spiritual development. Stage 1 is heteronomous morality, where you follow external rules through fear of punishment or hope of reward, the childhood stage where morality is entirely outside yourself. Stage 2 is autonomous morality, where you internalize cultural values and follow them because you've made them your own, adolescent morality, where authority moves inside but is still based on conditioning. Stage 3 is principled morality, where you develop abstract ethical principles and follow those, young adult morality based on reasoning. Stage 4 is situational wisdom, where you recognize that principles often conflict and must be applied with discernment, mature morality that can hold paradox. Stage 5 is moral intuition proper, where you perceive moral truth directly in each unique situation without needing rules or principles to mediate, the fully developed moral capacity that Steiner saw as humanity's future. This individual development has collective implications that will transform civilization. As more people develop moral intuition, the need for external laws diminishes because people naturally do what's right without coercion. Criminal justice systems based on punishment become obsolete because people self-regulate from internal moral perception. Religious authorities lose power because people access moral and spiritual truth directly. Political systems, based on imposing order on chaotic masses, transform because the masses are no longer chaotic, but self-organizing around perceived moral truth. Steiner saw this transition as inevitable, but warned it won't be smooth because existing power structures will resist the awakening of moral intuition in populations, since it makes those structures unnecessary. Your cultivation of moral intuition requires specific practices that strengthen this emerging capacity. Steiner taught a daily review exercise specifically for moral development. Each evening, review your day, and for each action ask not, was this right or wrong by some external standard, but did this serve evolution or hinder it, strengthen consciousness or weaken it, bring light or darkness? This trains you to perceive moral dimension directly, rather than through conventional categories. Another practice involves facing moral dilemmas in meditation, not to figure out the right answer, but to develop the organ that can perceive rightness, holding the question in consciousness and waiting for direct knowing to emerge. Most powerfully, acting on moral intuition when it arises, even when it contradicts social pressure or personal benefit, because each time you trust and follow that knowing, the capacity strengthens. The danger of confusing moral intuition with other things requires sharp discrimination. Emotional preference isn't moral intuition, you wanting something doesn't make it right. Cultural conditioning isn't moral intuition, feeling certain, because that's what you've always been taught, isn't direct perception. Ego inflation isn't moral intuition, believing you're above moral rules because you're special is the opposite of what we're discussing. Real moral intuition has specific qualities. It's clear but not loud, certain but not arrogant, demanding but not punishing, and it always serves life and consciousness rather than personal benefit. The protection against false moral intuition is the test of consequences. Genuine moral intuition, when followed, creates outcomes that serve the whole, even if they cost you personally. False moral intuition, which is usually ego desire dressed in spiritual clothing, creates outcomes that benefit you while harming others. Steiner taught that you can trust moral knowing that requires sacrifice and doubt, knowing that promises reward, because the higher self that generates true moral intuition operates on completely different principles than ego. The philosophical truth about moral intuition is that it's not something you develop from nothing, but something you uncover that's been there all along. The higher self already possesses complete moral perception, and what you're doing through spiritual development is clearing away the obstacles that prevent it from manifesting in your consciousness. You're not learning moral truth, you're becoming transparent to the moral truth that's always streaming from spiritual reality. And that truth is the same for everyone, because it's not personal opinion, but objective spiritual fact. The moral dimension of reality is as real and objective as the physical dimension, and moral intuition is simply the capacity to perceive it, like opening eyes that have been closed your whole life and discovering there was always a landscape there that you couldn't see because you hadn't yet developed the organ to see it. And, as that organ awakens, you discover that you don't need anyone to tell you how to live because life itself shows you, reality itself guides you, and every situation carries its own instructions for what consciousness requires in that moment if you've developed the sensitivity to read them. This is the future Steiner saw. Humanity no longer children needing rules, but adults reading moral reality directly and acting from that reading. Each person a sovereign moral agent accountable only to truth itself, and that future is already here in seed form in every moment when you know without knowing how you know that something is deeply right or deeply wrong. That's the future waking up inside you, moral intuition stirring to life. And your job is to nurture it, trust it, follow it, until the day comes when it's fully awake and you discover you've become a moral being in the deepest sense. Someone who doesn't need to ask what's right because you can see it. Your body is not what you think it is. You experience it as solid, fixed, determined by genetics and bound by physical laws that consciousness can't touch. But Rudolf Steiner perceives something that will fundamentally change how you understand matter itself. The physical body is in the process of being spiritualized. Slowly, across vast stretches of evolutionary time, consciousness is learning to penetrate matter so completely that eventually the boundary between spirit and substance will dissolve, and you will possess a physical form that responds directly to thought, will, and spiritual intention, the way your current body responds to nerve impulses. This sounds like magic or science fiction, but Steiner insisted it's simple evolution, the logical next step in a process that's been unfolding since consciousness first began manifesting in material form. Your current physical body is crude, dense, opaque to spirit, but it's already less crude than it was thousands of years ago, and it will become progressively more refined, more responsive, more spiritualized, until millions of years from now, humanity will possess physical vehicles that bear the same relationship to current bodies that current bodies bear to the primitive physical forms of early evolutionary stages. Modern biology is beginning to discover phenomena that hint at consciousness affecting matter in ways that shouldn't be possible, according to mechanistic paradigms. Research on the placebo effect by Dr. Fabrizio Benedetti revealed that belief alone can trigger measurable physiological changes, showing that consciousness somehow communicates with biological systems. Studies on psychoneuroimmunology by Dr. Candace Pert demonstrated that thoughts and emotions directly affect immune function through biochemical pathways, proving mind-body connection operates at molecular levels. Research on meditation's effects on biology by Dr. Richard Davidson showed that mental training produces structural changes in the brain and even affects gene expression. Studies on biophoton emissions by Dr. Fritz Albert Popp revealed that living cells emit and respond to light in ways that suggest quantum communication beyond chemical signaling. But where science sees interesting effects to study, Steiner saw the beginning stages of consciousness penetrating matter, spirit slowly gaining the ability to shape substance directly. Ancient teachings encoded knowledge of body transformation in language of resurrection, transfiguration, and immortality. Egyptian mystery teachings on the creation of the Sahu, the immortal spiritual body, described deliberate transformation of physical substance through spiritual practice. Taoist alchemy's internal practices aimed at creating the diamond body or golden elixir involved transforming the physical vehicle into something immortal. Christian teaching on resurrection body, especially accounts of Christ after resurrection appearing and disappearing, passing through walls, points toward physical substance made responsive to consciousness. Tibetan Buddhist teaching on rainbow body, where advanced practitioners dissolve their physical forms at death, leaving only hair and nails, demonstrates extreme case of consciousness mastering matter. Hermetic alchemy's philosopher's stone that transmutes lead to gold was metaphor for consciousness that transmutes dense matter into spiritual substance. The transformation happens through stages spanning enormous timescales, with most of humanity currently at very early stages. Stage 1 is unconscious physical body, where matter operates according to its own laws, with consciousness having no direct influence, the stage humanity occupied for most of its existence. Stage 2 is beginning sensitivity, where consciousness starts affecting body through emotion and belief, creating psychosomatic effects, both positive and negative, the stage most of humanity occupies now. Stage 3 is conscious influence, where developed individuals learn to affect biological processes through will and intention, creating healing, vitality, or specific changes deliberately. Stage 4 is mastery, where consciousness can reshape physical substance directly, the stage that won't be widespread for thousands of years, but which certain initiates have achieved. Stage 5 is complete spiritualization, where a physical body becomes direct expression of consciousness with no resistance. Matter perfectly obedient to spirit, the far future condition Steiner called spirit man. The signs that your physical body is beginning this transformation appear as unusual responsiveness to consciousness. Your body heals faster when you consciously direct life force to injuries. Your physical state reflects your spiritual practice in obvious ways, meditation making you visibly more vital and luminous. You experience your body as less solid and fixed than others seem to, sensing it as condensed energy rather than dead matter. You notice that focused intention can influence biological processes you shouldn't be able to control. Your body becomes increasingly sensitive to spiritual atmospheres and energies, responding to presences and forces that physical senses don't detect. These aren't signs of being special, but of normal human development, starting to accelerate toward its future destination. The cultivation of conscious relationship with your physical body requires practices that bridge spirit and matter. Steiner taught specific exercises for bringing consciousness into normally unconscious physical processes, like consciously directing warmth to different parts of your body through intention alone, which begins training will to work with physical substance. He recommended studying the physical body not just mechanically, but as expression of spiritual forces, contemplating how consciousness uses nerves, blood, organs to manifest in matter. Most powerfully, he taught treating your body as a temple, not through health fanaticism, but through reverence, recognizing it as the instrument through which spirit works in physical world and caring for it accordingly. The collective dimension of this transformation means that as more individuals begin consciously working with their physical bodies, the entire species' relationship to matter shifts. Genetic changes that serve spiritual development become more common as souls that need those changes preferentially incarnate. Environmental toxins and physical degeneration that result from unconscious relationship to matter create evolutionary pressure toward more conscious embodiment. Technologies that augment or replace biological functions, paradoxically, might serve evolution by making the inadequacy of purely physical solutions obvious, driving humanity towards spiritual solutions instead. The danger in this domain is attempting to force transformation before you're ready, using practices or substances to create experiences of body as energy or consciousness, affecting matter in dramatic ways before you've built the foundation to handle those experiences safely. Steiner warned that premature opening of connection between consciousness and physical processes can cause serious imbalances and illness because you're affecting systems you don't understand. The transformation must happen gradually, naturally, as consciousness develops through legitimate spiritual practice, not forced through techniques that bypass necessary development. Your protection is to work with your body's transformation patiently, recognizing it's happening across incarnations not within one lifetime. Small changes, subtle increases in sensitivity and influence, accumulated across years and lives, move you toward the far future condition more safely than dramatic shortcuts. Trust the timeline your higher self has already set, which knows exactly how fast transformation can happen without damaging the vehicle. The ultimate truth Steiner revealed about physical body transformation is that matter isn't what materialists think it is. Substance isn't dead stuff that happens to give rise to consciousness as an accident. It's condensed spirit, consciousness that has descended into density and forgotten itself. And the transformation of the physical body is consciousness waking up inside matter, spirit recognizing itself in substance, and that recognition gradually dissolving the apparent boundary between them. Your physical body is already divine, already spiritual, already perfect in its essence. And what's happening through evolution is that you're learning to perceive and work with that truth, instead of experiencing matter as foreign to spirit. The body isn't something to escape or transcend. It's something to recognize as yourself and gradually wake up from within. And when that process completes across vast stretches of time, you'll discover that there never was any matter, separate from consciousness. There's only consciousness appearing in different densities, and your body is consciousness that learned to be dense, so it could experience the joy of becoming light again, spirit's great adventure into and out of matter, and you are that adventure becoming aware of itself. There's an encounter waiting for you that Rudolf Steiner described as one of the most crucial and dangerous moments in spiritual development, a meeting with a being he called the guardian of the threshold. But what most people don't realize is that this guardian has a twin, a future aspect that shows you not who you've been, but who you can become. And this second meeting, the encounter with what we might call the guardian of the future, is equally important and equally dangerous because it reveals your potential with such blazing clarity that you must either rise toward it or spend the rest of your life running from the knowledge of what you failed to become. This isn't metaphorical. Steiner insisted that on the spiritual path you will actually encounter a being, whether in meditation, dreams, or waking vision, who is your own future self, your higher self made visible, and this being will show you with devastating precision exactly how far you are from what you're meant to become, and exactly what work remains to be done. And that revelation destroys most people who receive it, because the gap between current self and potential self is so vast that crossing it seems impossible. Contemporary psychology has documented encounters with ideal self in therapeutic and mystical contexts without recognizing these as actual meetings with real beings. Research on the best possible self, intervention by Dr. Laura King, showed that people who write about their ideal future selves experience increased well-being and motivation, suggesting contact with future potential has psychological power. Studies on guided imagery and future self-visualization by Dr. Hal Hirschfield revealed that connecting with mental representations of your future self increases present self-control and long-term thinking. Research on mystical experiences by Dr. Ralph Hood, using the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, documented encounters with beings of light or higher intelligences that provide guidance and reveal personal destiny. But what psychology sees as imagination or peak experience, Steiner understood as actual contact with your higher self existing outside time, reaching back to pull your present self toward its own manifestation. Mystery traditions across cultures have encoded this meeting in their initiatory systems. The ancient Greek encounter with the daimon, your personal spirit that knows your destiny and guides you toward it, describes this same meeting. The Roman concept of genius, the divine aspect of yourself that you must align with to fulfill your purpose, names this being. Christian mysticism's encounter with Christ as inner teacher or divine beloved represents meeting with your divine potential. Islamic Sufism's meeting with Khidr, the immortal guide who appears at crucial moments, describes contact with your own higher self in projected form. Indigenous vision quest traditions, where the seeker encounters spirit guides that reveal life purpose, all point to the same archetypal meeting with the guardian of your future. The signs that you're approaching this encounter include dreams of a luminous being who looks at you with love and expectation, as if waiting for you to become who they know you are. Meditation experiences where you sense a presence observing you, not judging, but seeing through all your masks to your essential nature. Moments of clarity where you perceive yourself from outside, seeing your current self with shocking objectivity and recognizing it as a pale shadow of what you could be. Inexplicable feelings of being called toward a destiny you can't articulate, but that feels more real than anything in your ordinary life. A growing sense of urgency that you're running out of time to become who you're meant to be, as if something is waiting for you to wake up and claim your inheritance. The meeting itself, when it comes, unfolds through stages that feel like progressive unveiling. First contact usually comes as a vague sense of presence, something watching you with attention that's neither approving nor disapproving, but simply seeing you completely. Second stage is glimpses, brief visions or impressions of a being of light that carries qualities you recognize as what you're striving toward. Third stage is actual encounter, whether in deep meditation or spontaneous vision, where you meet this being face to face and recognize it as yourself, your own higher self made visible. Fourth stage is the transmission, where this being shows you directly what you're meant to become, not through words, but through allowing you to briefly experience reality from its perspective. Fifth stage is the return to ordinary consciousness, carrying the devastating knowledge of what you saw, which you must now integrate and use to guide your development. This encounter operates both individually and collectively. Individuals who meet their guardian of the future receive personal guidance specific to their destiny. But there are also collective guardians, spiritual beings that hold the template of humanity's future and make it available to those ready to perceive it. Steiner himself claimed to have ongoing relationship with such beings who showed him future stages of human and cosmic evolution. Prophets, visionaries, and spiritual innovators throughout history have been those who encountered these collective guardians and brought back information about humanity's potential. Your preparation for this meeting requires building strength of soul, because encountering your higher self unprepared can be psychologically devastating. The gap between what you are and what you're shown you could become might crush you with despair or inflate you with spiritual materialism. Practices Steiner recommended include daily meditation on your ideals and aspirations, not fantasizing, but genuinely attempting to embody your highest values. Study of spiritual science to give you concepts and context for understanding the meeting when it comes. Most importantly, developing the humility to recognize how far you have to go while maintaining the courage to keep walking toward it. The danger is mistaking ego inflation or spiritual fantasy for genuine meeting with higher self. Your ego is expert at creating comforting visions of special destiny that require no real work or change. True encounter with Guardian of the Future is simultaneously uplifting and crushing, showing you possibility while making devastatingly clear how much work stands between current and potential self. Any vision that makes you feel superior to others or confirms your current path without demanding fundamental change is definitely not the real guardian, but ego wearing a spiritual mask. The protection Steiner offered is to test any such encounter against reality. Does it make you more loving, more conscious, more capable, more willing to serve? Does it demand actual development rather than just new beliefs? Does it humble you while empowering you? If not, it's not your higher self, but some other force or your own projection. The ultimate truth about the guardian of the future is that it's you, and it's not you. It's you in the sense that it's what you're becoming across incarnations, your essential nature that already exists complete outside time. It's not you in the sense that it's so far beyond your current consciousness that encountering it feels like meeting an advanced alien intelligence. Steiner taught that this being exists in your future, but also in eternal present. And it's constantly reaching back through time, trying to guide your development. And every intuition, every aspiration, every moment of moral clarity is this being breaking through your current limitations, trying to pull you toward itself. The meeting makes conscious what's been unconscious, makes visible what's been invisible. And once you've truly met your guardian of the future, you can never forget what you saw. You carry forever the knowledge of what you're meant to become. And that knowledge becomes both blessing and burden, inspiring you forward while condemning everything about your current self that falls short of that vision. You've been given the map to your own destination, and you cannot pretend anymore that you don't know where you're going or what you're meant to become. The guardian has shown you, and now your only choice is whether you'll walk toward that future or spend the rest of your incarnations running from it. Every choice you make today is creating the world of thousands of years from now, and Rudolf Steiner spent enormous effort trying to make humanity understand something that consciousness naturally resists. You're not just living your own life, working out your own karma. You are actively sculpting future reality through every thought, every action, every moment of consciousness or unconsciousness, and the effects ripple forward, not just into your next life, but into the entire future of humanity. And Earth. And this creates a level of responsibility so crushing that most people immediately retreat into the comfortable delusion that their personal choices don't matter beyond their immediate circumstances. But Steiner saw with spiritual perception that this is catastrophic error, that karma operates not just individually but collectively and cosmically. And the current state of humanity and Earth is the result of choices made thousands of years ago by souls who didn't realize they were creating our present. And what you do now is creating the conditions in which souls will incarnate 1,000 years hence, and they will either thank you or curse you for what you're preparing for them, and you won't escape accountability because you'll be one of those souls incarnating into the world you're currently creating. Modern chaos theory and system science have begun documenting how small actions can have enormous long-term consequences. Research on the butterfly effect by Dr. Edward Lorenz revealed that tiny initial differences in complex systems lead to vastly different outcomes over time. Studies on path dependence in evolutionary biology and economics show how early choices constrain future possibilities, creating trajectories that become increasingly difficult to alter. Research on generational trauma by Dr. Rachel Yehuda demonstrated that experiences don't just affect individuals, but change gene expression in ways that transmit to descendants. Climate science reveals that carbon emissions today will affect global temperatures for thousands of years. But where science sees cause and effect, Steiner saw karma, moral and spiritual causation operating alongside physical causation, with every act of consciousness or unconsciousness creating seeds that will sprout across vast expanses of time. Sacred traditions have taught karmic responsibility in ways that modern individualism has forgotten. Hindu teaching on karma explicitly states that actions create sanskaras, impressions that shape not just personal future, but collective destiny. Buddhist doctrine of dependent origination shows how each moment conditions all future moments in endless chains of causation. Indigenous teachings on 7 generations instruct considering impact of decisions on descendants far into future. Jewish concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world, frames human action as participation in cosmic restoration spanning all time. These weren't just ethical teachings, but descriptions of how reality actually works according to spiritual perception. The mechanism of future karma operates through layers of causation most people never consider. Physical karma is most obvious: pollute the earth, and future generations inherit poisoned soil and water. Biological karma weaken the human organism through unconscious living, and future souls incarnate into increasingly degenerative bodies. Cultural karma create materialistic value systems, and future societies will be trapped in spiritual poverty. Technological karma choose convenience over consciousness, and future humanity inherits dependence on machines. Most subtly and importantly, consciousness karma. Every moment of wakefulness or sleep, attention or distraction, love or indifference, literally shapes the field of consciousness that future souls will incarnate into, making awakening either easier or harder for them. The signs that you're living with awareness of future karma include making choices that cost you now but serve long-term good. You sacrifice convenience for sustainability, even though you won't personally benefit. You do spiritual practice knowing it contributes to collective consciousness, even if your individual progress seems minimal. You teach children and young people with reverence for the future they'll create. You create beauty, truth, and goodness, not for recognition, but as offerings to souls not yet born. You experience personal responsibility for humanity's trajectory, not from ego, but from recognition that you're helping create either heaven or hell for those who come after. The development of karmic awareness unfolds in stages as consciousness expands. Stage 1 is personal karma only, where you see that your actions affect your own future, but don't extend concern beyond that. Stage 2 is family karma, recognizing you're creating conditions for your children and descendants. Stage 3 is collective karma, understanding your choices affect your community and culture. Stage 4 is species karma, grasping that you're shaping humanity's future trajectory. Stage 5 is cosmic karma, the overwhelming recognition that you're participating in the creation of future reality itself, and every choice matters on scales you can barely comprehend. This individual karmic responsibility has collective dimensions that compound in both directions. Positive actions by individuals create momentum that makes similar actions easier for others, building positive collective karma. Negative actions create negative momentum that makes destructive choices more likely collectively. The current state of the world is the fruition of both positive and negative karma accumulated across generations and millennia. You inherit both the achievements and the disasters created by those who came before, and you're either continuing their trajectory or working to transform it. Your protocol for living with future karma awareness requires practices that connect present choices to future consequences. Steiner taught a specific meditation on the future. Imagine yourself 1,000 years hence encountering the consequences of your current choices and ask whether that future self would thank you or condemn you for what you're doing now. Before major decisions, contemplate not just personal impact but effects rippling through generations. Daily review your actions not just for personal karmic consequences, but for what they contribute to collective field. The danger is falling into either of two extremes. Paralysis from overwhelming responsibility, where you become so afraid of creating negative karma that you stop acting, or nihilism from believing nothing you do matters because you're too small to affect vast future. Both are ego tricks to avoid actual responsibility. Truth is that every action matters enormously, and you must act anyway, choosing as consciously as possible while accepting you'll make mistakes and create karma you'll need to resolve later. The protection against being crushed by karmic responsibility is recognizing you're not alone in this work. Every conscious human is creating future together, and the higher selves of all humans are coordinating from beyond time to guide collective development. Your responsibility is to do your part as consciously as possible, not to carry the whole future alone. Trust that if you work with genuine consciousness and goodwill, even your mistakes will serve evolution somehow. The ultimate truth Steiner revealed about karma and the future is that time is not what it appears. The future doesn't exist somewhere ahead waiting to happen. It exists now as potential. And what you do now selects which potential becomes actual. You're not creating something from nothing, but choosing between possibilities. And those possibilities include both continuation of current trajectory toward spiritual death or shift toward conscious evolution. The future souls who will incarnate are already real in spiritual dimensions, watching, waiting, hoping that current humanity will make choices that create a world they can incarnate into without immediately falling into unconsciousness. You owe them everything because you were once such a soul, waiting for the world that previous souls created, and what you found was both gift and burden, the accumulated karma of all who came before. Now it's your turn to either continue blessing or cursing those who come after. And this isn't abstract philosophy, but concrete reality that will determine whether humanity has a future worth incarnating into, or whether souls will refuse to incarnate into the wasteland we're creating, and the human experiment will simply end. Your choices matter that much. Every thought, every action, every moment of consciousness or sleep, creating the world that will be, and you cannot escape that responsibility because you'll be there living in it. And the only question is whether you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you contributed to making it better, or the shame of knowing you helped make it worse. Rudolf Steiner made a claim so outrageous that most people dismiss it without serious consideration. Humanity is developing a new form of clairvoyance, a capacity to perceive spiritual reality directly that will eventually become as common as sight and hearing are now, and this isn't regression to primitive trance states or mediumistic possession, but evolution to conscious spiritual perception, while maintaining full waking consciousness and critical thinking. This is crucial to understand because most modern people hear clairvoyance and immediately think of charlatans and delusion, and they're right to be skeptical, because most of what passes for clairvoyance is either fraud or pathological, unconscious states where ego or other entities speak while the person mistakes it for spiritual perception. But what Steiner described is something completely different, a future capacity where you can perceive spiritual reality with the same clarity and objectivity you now perceive physical reality, while remaining fully present, fully critical, fully grounded in reason. And this capacity is already stirring in individuals who are ahead of collective development curve. And cultivating it safely and sanely is one of the most important tasks facing anyone serious about spiritual development. Modern neuroscience is beginning to document unusual perceptual capacities that hint at something beyond normal sensory channels. Research on synesthesia by Dr. V.S. Ramachandran revealed that some people's brains create cross-modal experiences, seeing sounds or hearing colors, showing that perception is more flexible than usually assumed. Studies on blind sight by Dr. Lawrence Weisskranz demonstrated that people can respond to visual stimuli they report not consciously seeing, suggesting perception operates at levels below conscious awareness. Research on PSI phenomena by Dr. Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has shown statistically significant results in precognition and telepathy experiments that survive rigorous methodological scrutiny, indicating human perception may access information through non-physical channels. But where science studies anomalies, Steiner saw nascent spiritual organs beginning to function, early stages of new clairvoyance emerging. Ancient traditions distinguished clearly between lower and higher clairvoyance, though modern understanding has lost this distinction. Lower clairvoyance, what Steiner called atavistic or old clairvoyance, was the dreamlike trance state common in early humanity, where people perceived spiritual realms, but without clear consciousness or critical faculty. Shamanic journeying, mediumistic channeling, spirit possession all belong to this category. Higher or new clairvoyance is conscious, controlled perception of spiritual reality while maintaining full rational capacity, what Christian mystics called spiritual senses, or what Hindu tradition describes as developed siddhis in one who has achieved jnana. The difference is crucial. Old clairvoyance sacrifices consciousness to gain perception. New clairvoyance maintains and enhances consciousness while developing perception. The signs that new clairvoyance is beginning to develop include experiences of perceiving reality in layers, as if physical world is transparent and you can see energetic or spiritual dimensions through it. You might see auras or energy fields around living beings while remaining fully grounded and able to function normally. You perceive emotional or thought atmospheres in rooms and around people as if they're tangible. You have accurate intuitions about people or situations that go far beyond what sensory information provides. You experience synchronicities with such frequency they can't be dismissed as coincidence, as if you're perceiving connections invisible to others. Crucial difference from pathology or old clairvoyance: you remain fully present, can turn the perception on and off voluntarily, can subject what you perceive to rational scrutiny, and the information proves accurate when tested. The development of new clairvoyance follows stages that require enormous care and patience. Stage 1 is sensitivity, noticing subtle perceptions that others miss, but still within normal range. Stage 2 is imagination, Steiner's technical term for the capacity to perceive spiritual reality in symbolic form, seeing truth in images. Stage 3 is inspiration, perceiving spiritual reality more directly, hearing spiritual truths inwardly. Stage 4 is intuition, Steiner's highest term meaning direct participation in spiritual reality, knowing from within. These stages take years or incarnations to develop safely, and attempting to skip stages or force development leads to serious problems. The collective dimension of new clairvoyance means that as more individuals develop it, the collective field shifts, making it accessible to larger numbers. Steiner predicted that by the middle of the 20th century, enough individuals would have developed etheric clairvoyance that it would begin appearing spontaneously in populations. And we're seeing this in phenomena like near-death experiences, which have become so common they're almost normalized. People regularly reporting perception of spiritual dimensions during clinical death. This is the new clairvoyance beginning to stir collectively. Your cultivation of new clairvoyance must follow rigorous protocols to avoid the serious dangers in this domain. Steiner provided specific exercises, concentration practices that strengthen thinking so it becomes powerful enough to perceive without sensory input, meditation on pure concepts to develop imagination, contemplative practices on great spiritual truths, to awaken inspiration, complete devotion, and surrender to spiritual reality to develop intuition. Equally important are grounding practices, daily life in the physical world with work and relationships, rigorous self-observation to catch any inflation or delusion, study of spiritual science to provide maps and context, working with teachers who have developed these capacities and can guide you past pitfalls. The dangers are enormous and must be taken seriously. Premature opening of clairvoyant capacity before personality is purified and consciousness strengthened leads to psychological fragmentation, possession by harmful entities, or inflation, where ego claims spiritual perceptions as proof of its specialness. Many people who force clairvoyance through drugs, techniques, or sheer will end up in psychiatric wards or spend years recovering from spiritual emergencies that shattered them. The safe path is slow, gradual, building foundation first through moral development and thought training before attempting to develop direct perception. The protection Steiner emphasized is to develop thinking capacity first and foremost. Strong, clear, disciplined thinking is the prerequisite for safe clairvoyance because thinking is your rudder in spiritual worlds. Without it, you're blown about by every entity and impression you encounter. The sequence must be, first strengthen consciousness through thought training, then purify character through moral development, then carefully, gradually, under guidance, begin developing perception. Reverse that order and you court disaster. The ultimate truth about new clairvoyance is that it's not about seeing spirits or predicting the future or impressing others with special powers. It's about developing the organs of perception you'll need for humanity's future stages. Steiner saw that as humanity evolves, physical matter will become increasingly transparent to spiritual reality, and those who haven't developed capacity to perceive consciously will be helpless in that world. The new clairvoyance is evolution preparing you for conditions that will eventually be normal, when spirit and matter are no longer separate, and you need to navigate both simultaneously with full consciousness. You're not developing something exotic or optional, you're building the perceptual organs that your future self will need to function in the reality that's emerging, and the work you do now determines whether when that future arrives, you'll be able to see clearly and navigate consciously, or whether you'll be blind and lost in a world you can't perceive. The future demands new senses, and you're either building them now, or you'll incarnate into that future lacking the equipment to function there. There's a moment coming in human evolution, thousands or millions of years from now, depending on how you measure time, when something will happen that has never happened before in cosmic history. Humanity will complete its development and give birth to itself as a fully conscious spiritual being, what Rudolf Steiner called the spirit of man. And this represents not an endpoint, but a beginning, the moment when everything humanity has been through, all the suffering and development and struggle, across ages and incarnations, finally produces a new kind of being that is to current humanity, what humanity is to animals, a consciousness so far beyond what you can currently imagine that from here you can barely conceive it, and yet that being is what you are becoming, what all the spiritual work points toward, the reason this entire drama of evolution exists. And here's what makes this simultaneously exhilarating and humbling. You will be that being. The consciousness reading these words right now will eventually manifest as spirit of man, but getting from here to there requires transformation, so complete that almost nothing of what you currently identify with will remain. Everything personal must die, so the transpersonal can be born, and that birth is both humanity's highest achievement and its greatest sacrifice. Contemporary evolutionary theory provides context for this development, even though it can't grasp the spiritual dimension. Research on cosmic evolution by scientists like Dr. Brian Swimme reveals that the universe has been moving from simplicity toward complexity, from matter to life to consciousness, and there's no reason to assume this process stops with current human consciousness. Studies on Noosphere by Teilhard de Chardin described a planetary consciousness emerging from interconnected human minds. Research on collective intelligence by Dr. Thomas Malone documents how groups can exhibit intelligence greater than sum of parts, hinting at emergent properties of collective consciousness. But where science sees possibilities, Steiner saw actualities, spiritual realities already existing in seed form that will manifest across deep time. Ancient prophecies and teachings across traditions have pointed toward the same culmination. The Hindu teaching on return to Brahman describes individual souls ultimately merging with divine consciousness while retaining individual existence. Christian eschatology's New Jerusalem and resurrection of the dead in spiritual bodies points toward collective transformation of humanity. Buddhist teaching on Maitreya Buddha and the perfection of all beings describes everyone achieving enlightenment. Islamic teaching on the Mahdi and transformation of earth describes similar endpoint. These weren't just hopeful fantasies, but perceptions of actual spiritual destiny encoded in mythological language. The characteristics of spirit of man, as Steiner described it, defy current comprehension, but can be partially grasped. Spirit of man will possess complete conscious mastery over physical matter, able to shape reality directly through will and thought. It will have perfect moral intuition, knowing and doing right spontaneously without need for laws or ethics. It will perceive all dimensions of reality simultaneously, physical and spiritual equally visible and navigable. It will possess all knowledge developed through the entire human experiment, the accumulated wisdom of billions of souls across millions of years. Most significantly, it will be simultaneously individual and collective, each human retaining unique identity while participating in unified consciousness, the paradox of many in one that current logic cannot hold. The path from current human to spirit of man involves stages Steiner mapped across cosmic epochs. Current Earth evolution develops the capacity for ego consciousness and individual freedom. Future Jupiter evolution will transform astral body into spirit self, developing moral intuition and conscious spirituality. Venus evolution will transform etheric body into life spirit, mastering life forces and achieving immortality. Vulcan evolution will transform physical body into spirit man, spiritualizing matter completely. Only after completing all these stages, which takes literally billions of years, in physical time though consciousness experiences it differently, will humanity give birth to spirit of man as the fruit of its entire evolutionary journey. This personal transformation has collective inevitability, but individual uncertainty. All of humanity will eventually reach this stage because it's the inherent destination of the evolutionary process. But individual souls may take vastly different timescales to get there. Some souls are working consciously with development and will achieve spirit of man relatively sooner. Other souls resist evolution, clinging to lower stages, and will take much longer, possibly incarnating on other planets or in other forms before achieving this destiny. The timing is individual, but the destination is universal. Your conscious participation in this process means working now with the seeds of spirit of man already present in you. Every moment of genuine consciousness contributes to its development. Every act of selfless love feeds it. Every insight into truth strengthens it. Every creative act of will exercises capacities it will fully possess. You're not trying to become something foreign, but to actualize what you already are in potential. And all spiritual practice is accelerating this actualization. The collective implications are that as more individuals work consciously toward spirit of man, they create conditions that make it easier for others. Teachers, artists, scientists, mystics who achieve higher development serve as beacons showing what's possible. Cultural epochs where spiritual development is valued allow more souls to progress. The choices current humanity makes affect the timeline of this birth, either facilitating or delaying it, which is why your individual work matters so much. The danger is imagining this endpoint as escape or transcendence in ways that justify abandoning current reality. Spirit of man doesn't leave Earth or matter behind, it transforms them. The spiritual path is not away from the physical, but through it and beyond it while including it. Any teaching that uses future spiritual development as excuse to check out of present responsibility has misunderstood completely. The protection is to remain grounded in present work while holding awareness of future destiny. You're not trying to skip stages or force premature development. You're patiently doing the work of this stage while trusting the process that carries you toward completion. Balance vision of the future with acceptance of current limitations. The ultimate truth Steiner revealed about spirit of man is that it already exists, complete and perfect, in spiritual dimensions outside time. And what we call evolution is really the progressive manifestation in time of what is eternally real. You're already spirit of man in your deepest essence, and all the work, all the incarnations, all the suffering and joy are consciousness forgetting and remembering itself, spirit deliberately descending into matter so it can experience the triumph of emerging from matter as something new, the absolute becoming conscious of itself through the relative, the eternal birthing itself in time. This isn't about arriving somewhere else, but recognizing what you've always been beneath the layers of forgetting. Every moment you touch genuine consciousness, you're experiencing spirit of man briefly breaking through the veil of limited human consciousness. Every glimpse of moral truth, every perception of beauty, every act of love is spirit of man announcing itself through you. The future isn't coming, it's here, dormant, waiting for the conditions that will allow its full manifestation. You are the seed, and you are the tree, and you are the consciousness experiencing both. And the only question is whether you'll work consciously with your unfolding or resist it, whether you'll accelerate the birth or delay it, whether you'll be among the first waves of souls achieving spirit of man, or whether you'll cling to lower stages while others move ahead. The future doesn't arrive, it awakens. And it awakens inside you right now as you recognize these words not as information about something distant, but as your own deepest self calling to your surface self. Spirit of man reaching back through time to pull your current limited consciousness toward its own inevitable manifestation. And this entire teaching is that being speaking to you across the ages, saying, remember who you are. Remember what you're becoming. Remember that you are not this small. frightened personality, but eternal consciousness, dreaming the dream of being human on its journey to becoming God.